As always, timestamps have been provided, and be sure to check out my new React channel down below where we cover more videos like this. Enjoy the video.
Proxy Battlefields refers to the theory that advanced civilizations may utilize alternative locations or time periods to wage their wars, avoiding catastrophic damage to their own societies. As nuclear weapons and other destructive technologies have evolved to potentially eliminate entire nations with single strikes, future warfare might necessitate finding controlled environments for conflict. Some theorists suggest that astronomical anomalies like the Boots Void, an enormous, nearly empty region of space spanning roughly 330 million light-years, might actually be evidence of these proxy wars. The unusual emptiness could represent the aftermath of unimaginably powerful weapons that obliterated entire star systems and civilizations, leaving only darkness where galaxies once existed. More intriguingly, this concept intersects with time travel theories, proposing that inexplicable archaeological discoveries and supposedly out-of-place artifacts might be remnants of future conflicts. According to this view, advanced civilizations may have selected prehistoric Earth as their battlefield, explaining mysterious ancient technologies like the Baghdad Battery or precise megalithic structures that seem to defy the technological capabilities of their time. Proponents point to peculiar geological formations and unexplained radioactive sites as potential evidence of weapons testing or actual conflicts that occurred on Earth before human civilization emerged. Some even suggest that mass extinction events in Earth's history might have been collateral damage from these temporal wars. The theory also offers a solution to Fermi's paradox. Perhaps we don't detect alien civilizations because they've learned to conduct their conflicts in carefully selected proxy locations, preserving their homeworlds while devastating uninhabited planets or past time periods. Of course, the most sobering implication might be that our own timeline could be selected as someone else's proxy battlefield, leaving future archaeologists to puzzle over the mysterious disappearance of 21st century civilization. Let's hope they at least leave a note explaining what happened. Fourth dimensional astral projection describes the theory that humans can project their consciousness beyond spatial limitations to transcend time itself. Traditional astral projection involves the separation of consciousness from the physical body to travel through space, but this advanced concept suggests practitioners can navigate the fourth dimension, time, as well. Throughout history, reports of spontaneous time slips and prophetic visions may actually be uncontrolled instances of 4D projection. Ancient oracles, prophets, and seers across civilizations demonstrated remarkable accuracy in predicting future events, perhaps unknowingly using this ability rather than divine inspiration. Proponents point to declassified government documents about Project Stargate and similar psychic research programs as evidence that intelligence agencies seriously investigated these capabilities. The research allegedly uncovered individuals who could remote view not just distant locations, but also past and future events with surprising accuracy. Unlike traditional surveillance methods, 4D astral projection would leave absolutely no physical evidence. No cameras, no recording devices, no digital footprint. This makes it theoretically perfect for intelligence gathering. Some conspiracy theorists believe certain intelligence agencies have already perfected this technique and use it regularly to monitor potential future threats. Modern practitioners claim specific meditation techniques involving visualization of tesseracts, four-dimensional cubes, can help train the mind to perceive beyond our normal timeline. They describe experiences of witnessing historical events with crystal clarity or glimpsing probable futures that branch out like timelines from our present moment. Sleep researchers have documented cases where subjects report experiencing events that later occurred exactly as foreseen. These instances, often dismissed as déjà vu or coincidence, might actually be evidence of unconscious 4D projection during deep sleep states when the mind is most receptive to temporal exploration. Quantum physicists studying retrocausality, the idea that future events can influence the past, have inadvertently provided theoretical frameworks that could explain how consciousness might traverse time. The observer effect in quantum mechanics suggests consciousness plays a role in collapsing wave functions, potentially allowing trained minds to navigate between temporal possibilities.
Like this video and subscribe to Maker.
Absurdism Sway posits that our reality constantly tries to maintain the most mundane version of itself among infinite possible universes. This theory builds upon the multiverse concept, suggesting that while all possibilities exist somewhere, our specific universe acts as a primary reality that naturally gravitates toward the ordinary and explainable. According to believers, the universe itself actively works to suppress extraordinary events through what they call censorship via misdirection, a cosmic mechanism that either prevents inexplicable phenomena or quickly obscures them with reasonable explanations. The universe essentially has an immune response to the bizarre. Proponents point to how seemingly supernatural events often have conventional explanations emerge shortly after, as if reality is course-correcting itself. They interpret this pattern not as debunking, but as evidence of reality's self-defense mechanism against outside interference. What makes this theory particularly unsettling is its implication that any truly unexplainable phenomena we do experience represent successful attacks on our reality. These breaches, ranging from genuine paranormal encounters to inexplicable synchronicities, supposedly indicate moments when external forces temporarily overcome our universe's natural resistance. Enthusiasts meticulously document events that initially seemed supernatural, but were later explained away, searching for patterns in how quickly reality heals these anomalies. Some claim these recovery times are growing longer, suggesting our universe's defensive capabilities are weakening. The theory speculates these interfering forces could be anything from higher dimensional beings to rival universes attempting to merge with or destabilize ours. Their ultimate goals remain unknown, though some believe they seek to fundamentally alter the physical laws governing our existence. In an ironic twist, believers themselves acknowledge their theory perfectly exemplifies what it describes, an absurd idea that most people immediately dismiss, exactly as our mundane-seeking universe would want. Bodily calcification implications describes a speculative expansion of the pineal gland calcification phenomenon into a broader theory about human death and decomposition. The conventional understanding is that the pineal gland, a small endocrine gland in the brain, tends to accumulate calcium deposits as we age, potentially affecting its function in regulating sleep cycles and producing melatonin. This theory proposes that human decomposition isn't simply organic matter breaking down, but rather a process of systematic calcification, our bodies turning to bone because they're no longer being used. This suggests our internal anatomy might be far more complex than medical science acknowledges, with mechanisms that trigger calcification once a body is no longer housing consciousness. The theory connects to unexplained preservation phenomena, particularly the undecomposed bodies on Mount Everest. While conventional science attributes their preservation to extreme cold, proponents suggest these bodies haven't decomposed because they're somehow still in use, either by the original person's trapped consciousness or by external entities that have taken residence in the vacant biological vessel. Some fringe researchers point to unusual calcification patterns in certain cadavers and mummified remains as evidence. They claim these patterns follow predictable sequences that wouldn't occur through random decomposition processes. Of course, mainstream medical examiners attribute these observations to environmental factors and normal post-mortem changes. Interestingly, several ancient spiritual traditions describe the body as a temporary vessel that transforms after death to release the spirit. Modern supporters of this theory suggest these ancients might have been describing calcification processes rather than metaphorical transformations. One particularly eerie aspect involves accounts of bodies that show minimal decomposition despite not being in preservative environments. These cases remain scientific anomalies but fuel speculation about whether some biological mechanism recognizes when a body is truly abandoned versus when something still inhabits it. Hyperacting tulpa creation proposes that individuals with certain mental illnesses or psychological conditions may unconsciously generate tulpas, thought forms or beings created through concentrated mental energy. According to Tibetan mystical traditions, tulpas are intentionally created through meditation and visualization, but this theory suggests some people might create these thought entities involuntarily. The concept builds on reports that mental health facilities often have higher rates of paranormal activity. Rather than traditional ghosts, these phenomena might actually be unconsciously manifested tulpas generated by patients whose minds operate on different neurological wavelengths. These individuals may be unknowingly projecting their internal worlds into shared physical spaces. Proponents point to historical accounts of asylums where staff documented inexplicable occurrences, objects moving without explanation, voices without sources, and shadowy figures appearing in empty hallways. The theory suggests these weren't hallucinations but tangible thought forms created and sustained by the collective mental energies of patients. Some paranormal researchers have noted that abandoned mental hospitals retain unusual activity long after patients have left, suggesting these tulpas might persist independently after creation. Spiritualists describe these entities as existing in a liminal state, not quite human spirits, but not completely fabricated either. A few researchers have attempted to document differences between traditional hauntings and those potentially caused by tulpa creation. They cite distinctions in how these entities interact with the physical environment and how they respond to traditional methods of spiritual cleansing or exorcism. Modern psychological perspectives suggest this might be a metaphorical explanation for how intense emotional states can leave psychic imprints on physical locations. Whether literal or metaphorical, the theory offers an intriguing bridge between paranormal experiences and psychological phenomena. Demonic presentism posits that human consciousness can fundamentally alter reality, and sinister forces are exploiting this power. This theory combines several esoteric concepts to suggest that our collective attention is being deliberately redirected to trivial matters of popular culture and digital entertainment. According to proponents, humans possess an innate ability to shape reality through focused belief and knowledge, a concept found in various mystical traditions. However, this power isn't simply dormant when unused. It's being systematically harvested and redirected to serve darker purposes. The theory suggests that the modern obsession with digital devices and entertainment isn't accidental but orchestrated by demonic entities. By fixating our attention on screens, social media, and virtual worlds, we unknowingly transfer our reality-shaping abilities to these devices, which serve as conduits for supernatural forces. Advocates point to the correlation between increasing technological dependence and rising global chaos. They cite unusual weather patterns, political instability, and unexplained phenomena as evidence that our diverted consciousness is empowering malevolent entities to influence the physical world. Some researchers supporting this view note the symbolic imagery embedded in popular entertainment, suggesting subliminal messages designed to enhance this transfer of power. They identify recurring occult symbolism in mainstream media as ritual frameworks that facilitate this energy extraction. The theory also addresses why demonic forces would prefer indirect influence through technology rather than direct manifestation. By operating through the digital realm, a space humans voluntarily engage with, these entities bypass traditional spiritual protections while maintaining plausible deniability about their existence. Skeptics dismiss these connections as coincidental pattern seeking, while proponents counter that dismissal itself is evidence of successful manipulation, the perfect cover for entities that gain power from our distraction and disbelief. Hyperactive tulpa induction proposes that the alleged increase in mental health disorders across modern society is actually a calculated effort by elites to manufacture tulpas on a massive scale. According to this theory, powerful groups are deliberately fostering psychological conditions that make people more susceptible to creating these thought forms, essentially turning the collective unconscious into a tulpa factory. Believers point to statistics showing rising rates of anxiety, depression, and dissociative disorders as evidence of this manufactured mental health crisis. They suggest these conditions create the perfect psychological environment for tulpa formation, as people with fractured mental states are supposedly more likely to manifest autonomous thought entities. These engineered tulpas allegedly serve a dual purpose. They can be harnessed by the elite as psychic tools while simultaneously unleashing paranormal disturbances that only affect the general population. The theory claims that elite groups have developed mental techniques or technologies that render them immune to tulpa influences, allowing them to remain unaffected while the rest of humanity experiences increasing paranormal phenomena. Some proponents suggest that certain pharmaceutical medications actually enhance tulpa creation rather than treating mental illness. The medications supposedly contain compounds that strengthen the connection between human consciousness and these manifested thought forms. Conspiracy theorists point to the rise in reported paranormal encounters, mass hallucinations, and unexplained phenomena as evidence that these tulpas are already manifesting in our reality. They believe elite groups conduct secret rituals or use advanced technology to direct these tulpas towards specific goals, essentially creating an army of thought forms that exists beyond the physical realm, yet can influence material reality. Some versions of this theory incorporate references to MKUltra and other documented mind control programs as precursors to what they call weaponized tulpa induction. They suggest these earlier experiments were merely testing the potential for mass psychological manipulation that would eventually lead to widespread tulpa creation. The elite supposedly refined these techniques over decades before deploying them across society through media, technology, and environmental factors. Demonic media conglomerates emerged as an extension of the demonic presentism theory, suggesting that demons aren't a unified force, but instead operate as competing factions controlled by different elite groups and cults worldwide. According to believers, these demonic entities gain power through human attention, with media consumption serving as their primary feeding mechanism. The theory points to international media bans and censorship as evidence of nations protecting their citizens from rival demonic influences. When Country A blocks media from Country B, it isn't merely political posturing but a defensive measure against allowing enemy-aligned demons to harvest energy from their population. Proponents claim this explains why certain foreign films, television shows, and websites face seemingly disproportionate restrictions. Adherents cite the rapid consolidation of media companies since the 1980s as evidence of demonic influence, with each conglomerate supposedly representing a different demonic faction. They believe that distinctive production styles, recurring symbols, and thematic elements across a company's content are actually sigils and patterns meant to strengthen specific demonic entities. The theory also addresses the phenomenon of media addiction, suggesting that binge-watching and constant content consumption aren't just products of clever marketing, but demonic entrainment designed to establish permanent energy channels between viewers and specific otherworldly entities. This supposedly explains why people develop strong emotional attachments to particular franchises or networks. Some conspiracy theorists have created elaborate charts mapping which demonic factions control which media empires, often connecting ancient cults to modern entertainment executives. These charts frequently cite mysterious deaths in the entertainment industry as evidence of power struggles between rival demonic factions. The most devoted believers claim to have identified specific visual and audio techniques that different demonic factions use to enhance their energy harvesting efficiency. They warn that certain aspect ratios, color gradings, and sound mixing approaches are particularly effective at opening viewers to demonic influence. Of course, media executives have yet to confirm that quarterly earnings calls include updates on demonic energy harvesting targets. This entry, Satan and Prometheus, connects the dots between Greek mythology and biblical narratives through the symbolism of fire and forbidden knowledge. The theory examines how carbon-based flammable substances derived from once-living organisms serve as agents of destruction, effectively erasing life through combustion. In Greek mythology, Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gifted it to humanity, representing the dawn of knowledge and technological advancement. This parallels the biblical account of Eden, where the serpent tempted humans with the forbidden fruit of knowledge, consequently introducing death into the world. The theory suggests these aren't merely similar stories, but deeply connected narratives about the consequences of pursuing knowledge outside divine permission. As humans gain knowledge and independence from divine wisdom, they simultaneously invite corruption and mortality. Fire itself becomes a powerful metaphor within this framework, both illuminating and destructive, representing knowledge that empowers yet ultimately consumes. The carbon present in all flammable materials symbolizes life that, when burned, completes a cycle of creation and destruction. This interpretation extends to modern times through the God of the Gaps concept, proposing that as scientific understanding expands and relegates divine explanation to increasingly smaller gaps in knowledge, humanity experiences greater moral corruption and proximity to its own destruction. The underlying message suggests a warning. Knowledge pursued outside its proper context leads to death, mirroring how fire, while useful, ultimately reduces everything to ash when uncontrolled. The theory points to this pattern repeating across different religious traditions as evidence of a universal truth about human ambition and its consequences. The Panurgic Protocols describes a classified government program collecting individuals with extraordinary abilities and preserving them in suspended animation for future use during global crises. Beginning in the 1950s, intelligence agencies worldwide allegedly identified and abducted people demonstrating supernatural capabilities, paranormal talents, or genius-level intellect. These individuals weren't simply monitored under the esoteric surveillance program. They were extracted and placed into specialized stasis chambers, utilizing classified technology decades ahead of public science. Documents supposedly leaked by whistleblowers suggest these facilities exist hundreds of feet underground across multiple continents, with the largest complexes located beneath the Nevada desert and remote areas of Siberia. The protocols outline specific criteria for awakening these assets, including global pandemics, imminent nuclear conflicts, first contact scenarios, or societal collapse. More disturbing are indications that these individuals can be deployed as false prophets or manufactured leaders during engineered crises, inserted into society to guide public opinion toward government objectives under the guise of organic social movements. Former military personnel have described glimpsing enormous warehouse-like chambers containing thousands of stasis pods arranged in neat rows, each one housing a perfectly preserved human being. These witnesses report that many subjects appear to have been in suspension since the 1960s, showing no signs of aging despite decades passing. Some conspiracy researchers connect the Panurgic Protocols to the dramatic disappearances of notable scientists, artists, and thinkers throughout recent history. When brilliant minds vanish without explanation, they may not have defected or met with foul play. They might be sleeping in government facilities, waiting to be awakened when their unique talents are required. The name itself offers clues to its true purpose. Panurgic derives from Greek roots meaning capable of anything or all working, suggesting these preserved individuals represent humanity's ultimate toolbox for survival. Government agencies allegedly refer to these extraordinary people as contingency assets, rather than by their original names, completely dehumanizing them into strategic resources. Perhaps most unnerving is the possibility that certain world-changing inventions, scientific breakthroughs, or cultural shifts might actually be the work of these awakened sleepers, temporarily released to nudge society in predetermined directions before returning to their frozen slumber once their mission is complete. Non-Euclidean fourth-dimensional topography suggests our universe contains spatial anomalies where conventional physics breaks down, creating portals, time slips, and dimensional crossroads hidden in plain sight. Proponents claim Earth's physical landscape mirrors these cosmic irregularities. Just as sinkholes suddenly appear in solid ground, spacetime itself contains unexpected thin spots where reality becomes permeable. These theoretical weak points manifest as haunted locations, disappearance hotspots, and areas with persistent reports of impossible phenomena. The Bermuda Triangle, Japan's Aokigahara Forest, and Michigan's Lake Superior Triangle aren't just dangerous places, they're purportedly areas where the fabric between dimensions has worn dangerously thin. Researchers point to historical accounts describing sudden appearances of people in period clothing, soldiers from non-existent regiments, and travelers claiming to have visited towns that never existed. The Civil War sightings, where modern witnesses reported encountering fully equipped Confederate battalions that vanished when approached, represent classic examples of these fourth-dimensional breaches temporarily aligning with our reality. Mathematical models proposed by fringe physicists suggest these anomalies follow predictable patterns related to Earth's magnetic field fluctuations and celestial alignments. Some theorists claim ancient civilizations understood these principles, intentionally building monuments like Stonehenge and the Nazca Lines at locations where dimensional barriers naturally weaken. Military organizations worldwide have allegedly researched these phenomena extensively, with declassified documents hinting at experiments designed to map and potentially weaponize these spatial irregularities. Conspiracy theorists suggest some black-budget projects aim to create artificial breaches, explaining the unusual activity reported near facilities like Area 51 and Russia's Kola super-deep borehole. Personal accounts from dimensional travelers describe experiencing time differently within these anomalies, minutes in an alternate space translating to hours or days in our world. These stories often include descriptions of landscapes with impossible geometry and physics that defy comprehension, suggesting our brains simply cannot process fourth-dimensional spaces correctly. Some paranormal investigators now carry specialized equipment designed to detect these spatial anomalies, including modified electromagnetic field detectors and quantum fluctuation sensors. The scientific community dismisses such devices as pseudoscientific nonsense, which is exactly what interdimensional beings would want them to say. Field consciousness transference posits that parallel realities may be connected not through physical similarities, but through shared consciousness fields. When two field consciousnesses in alternate realities become sufficiently similar, entities can supposedly jump between these realities. This theory attempts to explain the Mandela effect phenomenon, where large groups of people share false memories that conflict with recorded history. Proponents argue that this transfer mechanism works like quantum entanglement, but for consciousness itself. They suggest our awareness exists as a field that can overlap with parallel versions of itself, allowing for occasional slippage between realities. These slippages manifest as collective memory discrepancies, from Nelson Mandela's death date to the spelling of the Berenstain Bears. The theory connects to several other fringe concepts. Presentism theorists claim that elites deliberately limit public knowledge and historical awareness to make populations more vulnerable to reality shifts. Similarly, hive mind induction advocates believe powerful groups are actively preventing humanity from developing the collective consciousness necessary to navigate between realities at will. Field consciousness transference also offers an unconventional explanation for tulpas, thought forms that some claim can manifest physically. Rather than being created through mental concentration, tulpas may actually be entities from parallel universes. The theory suggests that when someone genuinely believes such an entity exists in their reality, they create a consciousness gap that draws an identical entity from another universe into our reality. Supporters point to quantum physics concepts like superposition and observer effect as scientific frameworks that might eventually explain these paranormal phenomena. They cite cases of shared mass hallucinations, collective false memories, and purported tulpa manifestations as evidence that consciousness might indeed operate beyond conventional three-dimensional space. Critics note the theory conveniently lacks falsifiability and relies heavily on subjective experiences rather than empirical evidence. Mainstream scientists generally attribute the Mandela effect to the imperfect nature of human memory, combined with social reinforcement of misconceptions rather than interdimensional consciousness exchange. Fourth-dimensional tulpas originated from combining two esoteric concepts: traditional tulpa creation and astral time travel. The theory proposes that humans can not only project their consciousness across time, but can also send thought forms, called tulpas, backward or forward through the timeline to accomplish specific goals. According to practitioners, these time-traveling thought entities operate as a natural defense mechanism embedded in human consciousness. When a person faces life-threatening danger, their mind might instinctively create and project a tulpa into their own past, appearing as a premonition or warning to help them avoid the fatal future. This connects to the lesser-known butterfly susceptibility principle, where the timeline becomes increasingly malleable near critical survival junctures. Time Tulpa advocates point to unexplained phenomena like déjà vu, prophetic dreams, and sudden intuitive warnings as evidence of this mechanism in action. They believe these experiences represent successful interventions from future versions of ourselves, sending psychic constructs backward through time to alter our behavior and prevent catastrophe. The most dedicated proponents claim to have developed techniques to consciously create and direct these 4D tulpas, effectively turning them into tools for temporal divination. By entering specific meditative states and generating thought forms with clear intentions, they report receiving information from both past and future, though skeptics note these revelations remain frustratingly vague and untestable. Some fringe researchers suggest historical figures like Nostradamus and Edgar Cayce might have unknowingly tapped into this ability, receiving information not from spiritual entities, but from their own future projected thought forms. Let's just hope your future self isn't sending back a tulpa right now warning you to stop watching conspiracy theory videos. Earthly aura escapism suggests that our planet possesses a unified energy field that subtly controls human perception and free will. Proponents believe Earth's atmosphere or energy matrix functions as a cosmic filter, screening out celestial threats and otherworldly entities that exist just beyond our perception. The theory posits that Earth's electromagnetic field doesn't just shield us from solar radiation, but actively shapes human consciousness, limiting our awareness to a narrow band of reality suitable for survival on this specific planet. This planetary aura supposedly functions as both protection and prison, maintaining a collective hallucination of reality that keeps humanity functioning within certain parameters. Space exploration enthusiasts within this belief system view leaving Earth not just as scientific advancement, but as spiritual liberation. They theorize that astronauts who breach our atmosphere experience brief moments of expanded awareness before their Earth-conditioned minds rationalize the experience. The farther from Earth one travels, the theory suggests, the more these perceptual constraints dissolve. Some adherents point to astronaut testimonies about profound shifts in consciousness during spaceflight as evidence of breaking free from Earth's perceptual constraints. They interpret the overview effect, the reported cognitive shift experienced by astronauts viewing Earth from space, as the first stage of perceptual liberation rather than simple psychological awe. The more extreme versions connect with extraterrestrial demons theory, proposing that ancient texts describing angels, demons, and gods were actually documenting encounters with interdimensional beings that exist just outside our Earth-filtered perception. These entities supposedly cannot fully manifest within Earth's aura, but become increasingly visible as one moves away from the planet's influence. Secular oxygen theory forms another branch of this belief system, suggesting the specific mixture of gases we breathe plays a crucial role in maintaining our limited perception. Proponents claim that experimental breathing of alternative gas mixtures can temporarily expand consciousness, a dangerous practice that has led to numerous deaths among extremist believers trying to see beyond the veil. Modern adherents point to unusual phenomena reported during high-altitude flights, anomalous space station recordings, and discrepancies in Mars rover footage as evidence that our perceptual limitations begin to fail at certain distances from Earth. They believe the aggressive push by private companies to reach Mars isn't driven by scientific curiosity or economic potential, but by secret knowledge about what awaits human consciousness beyond Earth's sphere of influence. Ironically, the very same theorists often argue against space exploration, fearing humanity isn't spiritually prepared for the perceptual freedom that awaits us beyond our planetary cradle. As one anonymous NASA whistleblower supposedly warned, we're not colonizing Mars. Mars is colonizing us. Grand nuclear cryptid theory posits that nuclear events create tears in dimensional barriers, allowing entities from other planes to enter our world. The concept emerged after the Fukushima disaster, where conspiracy theorists claimed unusual energy readings indicated more than just radiation. They suggested momentary planar rifts occurred during the meltdown. Online forums began connecting historical nuclear detonations with regional cryptid sightings, creating elaborate timelines linking atomic tests to unexplained phenomena. This theory recasts the nuclear arms race as a covert program to contact and control interdimensional beings. Declassified documents showing unusual radiation patterns after certain tests are cited as evidence of successful breakthroughs. Proponents point to the strategic positioning of test sites in remote locations as preparations for containing whatever might emerge rather than simple safety precautions. The theory connects to the "America nuked a cryptid" conspiracy, suggesting the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki weren't simply acts of war, but strategic strikes against Japanese-controlled interdimensional entities. Supposedly, American intelligence had discovered Japan's Imperial Occult Division was harnessing cryptid powers through ancient shrines, prompting the US to deploy their own summoned beings through nuclear delivery systems. Government redactions in documents about unusual phenomena observed during Pacific nuclear tests are interpreted as cover-ups of successful entity materializations. Some theorists claim the famous Castle Bravo test accidentally opened a much larger portal than intended, explaining why its yield was significantly higher than scientists predicted. Esoteric Prosetism enters the narrative as followers believe nuclear holocaust isn't an end but a beginning, a global ritual to permanently open dimensional gates. The increased reports of supernatural sightings near power plants and test sites, as outlined in nuclear grid theory, are interpreted as evidence these entities have already established footholds in our dimension. Conspiracy circles share witness accounts from military veterans describing strange containment facilities at test sites and unusual protocols for non-human contingencies. The theory even suggests certain radiation symbols contain subtle sigils designed to direct and control which types of entities can cross over during nuclear events. Perhaps most disturbing, adherents believe the nuclear football isn't for launching missiles, but for activating specific summoning sites in national emergencies, the ultimate failsafe when conventional weapons won't suffice against threats both terrestrial and beyond. Warfare is obsolete suggests that traditional armed conflict between nations has become practically extinct in the modern era, not due to peace, but because of deception. This theory claims that actual warfare would be too destructive in our nuclear age, so world powers have instead created elaborate fake conflicts to maintain the illusion of traditional warfare while serving multiple hidden agendas. According to proponents, these staged conflicts serve as theater for the masses, designed to foster government dependency through fear and justify military budgets that funnel money to shadowy interests. They point to inconsistent media coverage, suspicious troop movements, and conveniently timed political crises as evidence of orchestrated pseudo-wars. The theory takes an even stranger turn when it suggests that historical conflicts over seemingly trivial matters, like the War of Jenkins' Ear or the Football War, were actually proxy battles manipulated by future humans using past soldiers to fight their conflicts. This creates a temporal battlefield where casualties from the past serve future agendas while maintaining plausible historical context. This temporal warfare hypothesis branches into three possible mechanisms. First, that entire future military units were physically deployed to historical battlefields, with their presence and destruction carefully erased from historical records through sophisticated manipulation of documentation and survivor memories. Second, that key historical leaders were actually plants from the future, specially trained agents sent back in time to guide humanity according to elite future agendas. This interpretation reframes the Panurgic men theory, suggesting these weren't interdimensional beings, but rather humans from our own future manipulating our past. Third, and perhaps most disturbing, that entire populations throughout history were brought to war through advanced mind control techniques. Under this view, the religious fervor behind the Crusades or the 30 Years' War wasn't divine inspiration, but artificially induced behavior. future humans using chemical compounds or even more advanced technological means to influence historical figures into waging specific conflicts. Believers cite unexplained technological anomalies in historical records, suspicious commonalities in battle tactics across disconnected civilizations, and the convenient timing of conflicts that mysteriously benefited parties who weren't even involved. As one researcher put it, history isn't written by the victors, it's written by the future. Contemporary cognitohazards refers to the theory that certain forms of information can function as mental contagions, causing psychological harm simply through exposure. Some believers suggest that widely circulated conspiracy theories serve not just as misinformation, but as weaponized cognitive traps designed to trigger paranoia, social withdrawal, and deteriorating mental health in susceptible individuals. Proponents point to documented cases where exposure to specific conspiracy content has led otherwise stable people into spirals of increasing isolation and paranoid behavior. They note patterns in how these cognitohazardous ideas spread, often gaining traction during periods of social instability when people are most psychologically vulnerable. The more insidious aspect of this theory suggests government intelligence agencies have deliberately developed and released false conspiracy theories as psychological operations. According to this view, these fabricated narratives serve as cognitive sleeper cells, remaining dormant in the public consciousness until activated by specific triggers or societal conditions. Some theorists connect rising rates of anxiety disorders, depression, and other mental health conditions to deliberate efforts to weaken population resistance to these info hazards. They claim certain pharmaceutical compounds, food additives, or electromagnetic frequencies have been deployed to make citizens more susceptible to cognitive manipulation. Digital platforms allegedly serve as perfect delivery systems for these cognitohazards, with algorithms specifically designed to identify psychologically vulnerable users and expose them to increasingly destabilizing content. The theory suggests these systems can identify early signs of susceptibility through behavioral data and then precisely target individuals with content calibrated to their specific psychological vulnerabilities. Historical documents from MKUltra and other mind control research programs are cited as evidence that governments have long sought methods to influence behavior through subtle psychological manipulation. Declassified documents show interest in using information itself as a vector for psychological influence, lending some historical context to these claims. Ironically, the contemporary cognitohazards theory might itself qualify as the very type of infohazard it describes, a recursive trap where awareness of the concept makes one increasingly suspicious of all information encountered thereafter. After all, once you start looking for mind viruses, it becomes difficult to trust your own thoughts. Fifth-dimensional astral projection is an extension of traditional astral projection theories that suggests consciousness can travel not just within our own timeline, but across parallel universes. While conventional astral projection involves the soul temporarily leaving the physical body, this advanced form proposes that experienced practitioners can navigate the multiverse by projecting their consciousness through a fifth dimension that connects all possible realities. Adherents claim this explains countless reports of dimensional shifting and the Mandela effect, where large groups share memories of events that supposedly never happened in our timeline. The theory suggests these aren't false memories, but rather bleed through experiences from other travelers' consciousness briefly intersecting with our reality. Some practitioners report vivid experiences of lives in worlds where historical events unfolded differently, technology developed along alternative paths, or personal decisions created dramatically different circumstances. The most controversial aspect involves consciousness swapping, where two identical versions of a person from different timelines supposedly project simultaneously and exchange places. This allegedly explains cases where individuals suddenly display radically different personalities, skills, or memories while insisting they're the same person. Believers point to documented cases of people who awakened with entirely new memories, spoke languages they never learned, or possessed technical knowledge they had no training to acquire. Advanced practitioners claim to have developed techniques involving specific brainwave frequencies, crystal arrangements, and meditation postures that help navigate the fifth dimension. These methods allegedly allow the consciousness to lock onto specific coordinates in the multiverse, making targeted jumps possible rather than random wandering. Some spiritual communities guard these techniques closely, claiming irresponsible use can lead to permanent displacement or fragmented consciousness spread across multiple realities. The theory intersects with quantum physics concepts like the many worlds interpretation and superposition, with proponents suggesting consciousness itself might be the observer that collapses quantum probability waves. Scientific skeptics point out the complete lack of measurable evidence for such claims, while believers counter that conventional science lacks the tools to measure phenomena operating outside our dimensional constraints. Prophecies Are Cognitohazards refers to the unsettling theory that prophetic visions don't predict the future, they create it. According to this concept, prophecies function as self-fulfilling information hazards that implant themselves in human consciousness and compel their own manifestation. Throughout history, numerous prophecies have come true not because of supernatural foresight, but because humans became aware of them and unconsciously or deliberately worked to fulfill them. The mere act of sharing a prophecy plants a seed in collective awareness that grows until someone brings it to fruition, creating a closed causal loop where knowledge of the future causes that future to exist. Ancient oracles may have understood this mechanism, which explains why many delivered their prophecies in cryptic, metaphorical language, not to be mysterious, but as a desperate attempt to dilute the cognitohazardous effect. By making prophecies ambiguous, they hoped to weaken their mimetic power and prevent the worst outcomes from manifesting. Some theologians propose that divine revelation itself might be carefully filtered for this reason. Religious texts often contain prophecies wrapped in symbolism and allegory precisely because clear, detailed predictions would ensure their own fulfillment through mimetic infiltration of human minds. Modern psychological research inadvertently supports this theory, revealing how suggestion and expectation can powerfully shape behavior. Political movements, cultural trends, and even technological innovations have emerged after being predicted in works of fiction or speculative writing, suggesting these weren't predictions but causal triggers. The most disturbing implication is that apocalyptic prophecies across cultures might function as ticking time bombs in our collective unconscious. With each generation that learns of them, the probability increases that someone will take actions to bring about the end times described in their cultural mythology. Proponents of this theory suggest that certain government agencies monitor and occasionally suppress specific prophecies they deem particularly dangerous. Some evidence indicates that classified projects have researched methods to quarantine prophecies through targeted disinformation campaigns or by promoting alternative interpretations that reduce their mimetic potency. The theory posits that truly successful prophecy prevention would be invisible to us. We would never know which catastrophic futures were averted because the prophecies that would have caused them were effectively contained. Perhaps the most dangerous predictions aren't recorded in any book we know. Post-Reset Operation Bluebeam combines several apocalyptic conspiracy theories into one grand narrative about elite plans for humanity's future. According to believers, global elites aren't planning complete human extinction, but rather a controlled population reset followed by the implementation of a false religion. The theory suggests powerful figures will orchestrate a massive reduction in global population through manufactured crises. The survivors would then be subjected to advanced psychological manipulation techniques, including holographic technology described in the original Project Bluebeam conspiracy. These projections would allegedly create worldwide religious experiences custom-tailored to different cultural expectations. Following this mass deception, the theory claims specialized artificial beings called Empyrean caretakers would guide the remaining humans. These entities would appear as benevolent helpers, but would actually serve to reshape human spirituality. Their true purpose would be to establish a new world religion with the elites positioned as godlike entities. Proponents point to various elite-funded transhumanist projects, massive seed vaults, underground bunkers, and statements about population concerns as evidence. They also highlight ancient religious texts describing cyclical destructions and rebirths of civilization, suggesting this has happened before. The most distinctive aspect of this conspiracy is its spiritual dimension, the idea that beyond controlling human bodies and societies, the ultimate goal is to control human souls by removing authentic spiritual connections and replacing them with artificial ones. By positioning themselves as divine beings, the elites would supposedly achieve the ultimate form of control over humanity. Some versions suggest advanced technology has already been developed to directly influence human consciousness, with test runs allegedly occurring in remote areas. Believers claim these tests explain certain mass religious experiences and visions reported throughout the world. Perhaps the most disturbing element of this theory is how it takes legitimate concerns about technological overreach, environmental collapse, and wealth inequality and weaves them into an apocalyptic spiritual narrative that's nearly impossible to disprove. After all, if you're planning to become a god, you'd probably keep it quiet until showtime.